down, you bastard!
Brought to you by supporters who probably have better taste than this schmuck.
I have very specific aesthetic tastes when it comes to Soundwaves and Shockwaves. It's those two specifically. I guess because they're second in command of the Decepticons, I sort of have my own feelings about how they should look. And I already have Soundwaves that look that way in my collection, and I already adore them, but not in the Legend scale. Until I got today's topic. Iron Factory has been on a bit of a different trajectory as of late. Some of their figures move into the samurai style, some of their figures move into their own new style, and then some of their figures are engineering first. Hound was a big and great example of that, and he's one of my favorite Legends figures of all time. And that's where this particular Soundwave falls into. He is engineering first. And that causes a lot of people to be at odds with what this figure is doing. Why should you be interested in this kind of Soundwave? The cassette player mode doesn't work, so why even engage with this? Why not just forget about it entirely? Well, that's the thing. You see, when it comes to this Soundwave, you really have to change your perspective. One thing I see quite a bit when people criticize this figure is a lot of people end up getting the primary alternate mode wrong. See, I know most G1 Soundwaves typically go for the cassette player mode. I mean, it's just what they do. But really, for this Soundwave, the main focus is the truck mode. It's the one that they put the most effort into. And as a Cybertronian truck, it works quite well. The big thing about Cybertronian modes is just that everything needs to kind of feel like it fits together properly. My big issue with the Siege version was it just felt like a bunch of parts pushed together. Nothing was really cohesive, whereas here, it is kind of cohesive. You can still sort of see that the arms are here and the feet are there, but it feels like a giant Cybertronian battering ram. It just goes straight into the thing. Pinwheels as well, so it rolls reasonably well, just not on this surface. I know a lot of people will look at this and say, oh, it turns into nothing. But really, when you compare it to the earlier Iron Factory figures, it's come a long way. I mean, figures like fucking Blitzwing over here, no. They've taken a lot of what they've learned with the older Iron Factory Cybertronian vehicle modes and used it to dictate how this turns out. They're not really forced to go for any specific accuracy, it's just a good mold for the sake of being a good mold. And it turns out really well. I really love the way that the cassette door becomes the front window. It's a wonderful aesthetic. The stripes on the side give really nice visual interest. They've got lovely paneling on the side here that works very well. Even the feet at the back blend in pretty well. They're probably the simplest part of the design, but they still work. There's no real lights at the back here, and I feel they could have engineered some of them in, but it's still alright. One thing I do find a little bit annoying is that unfortunately you do need all of the weapons to make it complete. The fists are completely visible under there, and unfortunately if you lose those, well, the fists are just going to be visible from the top. But with the weapons on there, it works really well. I guess it's like Studio Theory's Sideswipe, where the parts forming really adds to the experience. Doesn't take anything away, it just makes it better. I'm not so sure about the antenna back here. It's a little bit reminiscent of DX9 Soundwave. Due to the way this transforms, there's no real way to have this fold into the back there, so it's just left sticking out the top, or you can remove it and keep it to the side, but that's really your only option. Would have much preferred something like Siege, where they engineered it in a way and it just kind of sticks in there without any actual issues. But I mean, this is a triple changer. It's already doing a lot, so I can't really fault it too much. Plus, you know, Legends figure, what you gonna do? It's just in general a really fun vehicle mode. I'm not gonna pretend it's the best thing since sliced retracts. It's messy in a few areas. I do think some more paint would have helped tie it together, but most of the paint was applied to robot mode, so I do understand. But it's a nice, affordable, comparatively, Soundwave that does 3 modes, and it's a fun experience above all else. And I kind of miss that from a lot of third-party Legends, just fun experiences, and that's something Iron Factory delivers. New Age delivers it too, but they're very much going into the accuracy department. This is just aiming to be a fun Soundwave, and I really appreciate that of it. Anywho, size-wise, he is 8.1 centimeters long, 4.5 centimeters wide, and 4.1 centimeters tall, including the little thing at the back there. And for comparisons, here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Core Class figure, a standard modern Micromaster, a standard modern Minicon, a not-so-standard Lego minifigure, and crumbs. Of course, if you don't like this mode, you can use the cassette player mode, even though this mode is awesome, but you know, you do you. Remove all the accessories like so, off they come, and this goes to show what it looks like without the accessories in there. It does look a lot messier and pretty unfinished, so it is unfortunate. Anyway, first thing you want to do is untab the arms from the top like so, untab the side panels, they'll rotate around, and rotate into the sides of the legs. bring the feet up for later. They'll function a little bit differently later. We'll bring this panel down for now to make things easy to transform, but we're going to leave the wheels in place. This whole section rotates upwards, and then this part goes over the top like so. Separate the legs, rotate them around like so that we can get transforming. These rotate upwards, the feet rotate around and sit there like so and like so. And now we can see why we left the wheels. This tab's going to go into the wheel there. And at the same time, that tab's going to go into there. Little bit tricky, but eventually you'll get the hang of it. Eventually, after squeezing, it all comes together, and we got the side of there. Same on this side. It's probably the most difficult part of the transformation. It is a lot more difficult on camera than it is in person. But at least now we're mostly done. The fists actually come out to stabilize the rest of it. This is something I got wrong with the best of 2022 list. They actually come out with the panels clipping in there, and they will stabilize the whole mode. It does support a lot better against any surface. Now, with the arms, there's unfortunately not really a lot you can do. There's not really anywhere they tab into specifically. But still, we are pretty much done. And in cassette player mode, yeah, I'm not going to pretend this is that great. It is very weirdly shaped because they've prioritized the robot mode over this mode. They've prioritized the other two modes completely. And that is absolutely fine. Every triple changer has one mode that is a bit of an issue. I mean, this is what? The fourth triple changer I've covered in the marathon? I've covered a lot of triple changes, and it's just getting really exhausting at this point. I shouldn't do this again. I've made a big mistake. But no, as far as cassette players go, it's probably one of the weakest out of the bunch. I mean, unless you count the original Iron Factory version, but that's not really cassette player. That's just a space thing. If you want a much better cassette player, you've got options. You've got DX9, you've got New Age, I guess you have Magic Square, and Doctor Wu, I suppose. This is not going to be on the level of that. I mean, the paint is nice. I really like that they've got the nice button at the top there. The silver is resplendent, the blue is lovely, but then you've got the tiny button section that doesn't fit together, the thighs just sticking out here. It feels like this is the entire cassette player, and then it just extends below and doesn't look very good. And the back is atrocious. The arms don't even do anything. At least it actually stands against the table with the hands sticking out there. I mean, that is fine. I mean, what you see is what you get. There's not a lot to criticize because there's not a lot it really does right. It's a bit of a mess of an alt mode, but it's the third mode on a triple changer, so it's understandable. Really, the only thing I can feasibly see them fixing is that. The buttons do not stay in. They are not glued. I just don't get why third-party companies keep avoiding glue. Like, glue your bits in. Come on. Do better. It's something you can just do and fix everything. And now it's fallen apart. Oh dear. I don't hate this mode. I know a lot do. I know a lot consider this a complete failure of a Soundwave because the cassette player is terrible, and oh no, they should have removed the truck mode. But the truck mode is the point. It's a triple-changing Soundwave, a triple-changing Legends Soundwave that makes sacrifices in all of its modes, except really robot mode. And that's why it's brilliant, and that's why I can't really bring myself to hate this mode. There's a lot it does wrong, but it's not the full story. There's a greater context at play here, so I reckon it's fine. Anyway, size-wise, he is 8.2 centimeters by 4 centimeters. And size-wise, here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Core Class figure, a standard modern Micromaster, a standard modern Minicon, a not-so-standard Lego minifigure, and crumbs. Transformation into robot mode is basically the way you'd expect. You just take everything apart and do as you do. Panels go in like so. Legs go around to their right configuration as they do. Feet rotate around as they are supposed to, but you'll notice these are actually backwards, and we'll fix that later. Arms come out. The wheels basically fold inwards into the back. Fold in together. It just makes things a little bit easier, but we'll leave that down because the head's got to come up later. First off though, bring this down. Rotate the waist to 180 degrees and bring the legs around properly. Open up the chest, bring the head up, and close that. This does mean that there's no room for the actual cassettes to come out, but they did make sort of target mastery guys that I was unfortunately never able to get, but they do exist if you want them. Bring the arms into place, legs into place, backpacks into place, and you're basically done. Nice little Soundwave. Robot mode is really where this figure is at. This is probably one of the most gorgeous G1 adjacent Soundwaves I have ever come across. It's stylized, sure, but it's stylized in a very lovely way. It's purposeful. They know exactly what they're doing. It's basically the Blockies version, but on steroids, without the proportional differences. Of course, it came out well before Blockies, but that kind of gives you an idea of what it's supposed to be. It goes for a much smaller torso and much bulkier legs, especially with the kibble. I mean, most of the stuff is just kibble, but I think it really gives him a cool identity. It's kind of similar to Robot Paradise Soundwave, in a good way. I mean, I always love beefy-legged Soundwaves. It's just how I've always preferred them. I know it's not accurate to anything in particular, but it's really nice. The silver on this thing is absolutely gorgeous. gorgeous. All over the face, all over the thighs, all over the shins, all over the feet, all over the forearms. It just looks gorgeous from every single angle. The rest of the paint, there's not a lot of it. It's mostly just silver, aside from the gold on the chest, bit of yellow and red on the legs and the red stripes. Yellow and red is done quite well. I'm always going to call out when that's done well because it's very difficult to do. But in general, it's very well painted. Not a lot of paint choices, but a lot of paint, and it's nice. I like how the kibble mimics the kind of batteries that you get on the sides of the legs. It's a nice way that works. And the back is clean, like so goddamn clean. I guess that's why he has the removable butt plate there, so he gets more articulation. But I just would have preferred for it to be glued in, but that's just me. Of course, he does come with two guns. You've got this one that pegs together, goes in his hand on a square peg. I've seen a bit of complaints about the square peg usage instead of the traditional 5mm or 3mm, but I think it works really well. And the Gatling gun on the top, which works great too. One thing I love is that it's actually got a hinge in it, so it rotates upwards, both in the backpack and the gun itself. The reason why I love when it does it is when you turn the head to the side, you can still see it even above this thing here. That's why I like it when it actually moves up. I mean, rotating it also works, but hinging up always works better. Articulation is really good. You've got a nice ball-jointed head, ball-jointed shoulders with separate shoulder pieces so that he doesn't get stuck, thigh-sweeps and a nice elbow that goes well beyond 90, and a swivel at the wrist. He does come with alternate wrists as well, but I've since unfortunately lost them. The downside of moving, you deal with a lot of shit. Waist swivel's unimpeded. The front skirt is a single piece, but it moves up separate from that, so that's nice. All the way forwards, all the way to the side, but sadly nothing to the back because of the butt plate, and I guess you can remove it, but it's fine. Thigh swivel, a nice double-jointed knee that gets a little bit beyond 90, and I love how the kneecap goes off separately. A bit of a forward foot pivot because of the transformation and the ball-jointed feet. This guy poses very well. He is just lovely. I think the big thing with this Soundwave is that he's more than the sum of his parts. If you really look at every individual thing, he does have issues. The weapons do have to parts form, which I'm perfectly fine with, but not everyone will be. The vehicle mode is a bit of an acquired taste, and the cassette player mode is just not good at all. And the robot mode, although it is amazing, it's not what everyone's kind of into. Like, I don't think there's much wrong with it at all. I mean, maybe it would be nice if they had a cassette functionality, but there's tons of Soundwaves that have that. But really, I think the overall experience is what makes this figure. He is just fun incarnate. He's one of the most playable Iron Factory releases recently. You just find yourself wanting to go back and forth endlessly, messing with him constantly. I wouldn't say he's as well engineered as something like Hound or maybe Sea Spray, but he is very close. And he's a triple changer. That's not something you really see with Legends figures. I've basically covered most of them in this year's marathon, so that goes to show there aren't that many. And they pulled it off really well. Yes, there are sacrifices, but those sacrifices absolutely makes sense. Anyway, to finish off, size-wise, he's roughly 5 centimeters by 10 centimeters. And here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Core Class figure, a standard modern Micromaster, a standard modern Minicon, a not-so-standard Lego minifigure, and crumbs. Certain figures are designed to be engineering first, and I feel there's a real animosity to those sorts of figures these days. Why should something be engineering first when it should instead be accurate to this form of source material? You have to follow the source material. Why don't you follow the source material? The source material is the Bible. Well, no, not every figure has to do that. Some figures can just be fun in their own right. And although this isn't a completely original figure, I mean, it is a Soundwave after all, I feel it scratches an itch that a lot of other Legends class figures don't. It is a Legends release that is just trying to be fun, and it succeeds incredibly well. Why should this Soundwave be accurate? Why should it prioritize the microcassette player mode when it offers 3 modes in general and the compromises aren't really that much of an issue? Why should it fit in your specific space when it is wonderfully articulated, wonderfully sculpted, has great engineering and wonderful paints? Why should it fit in your idea on what a Transformer should be when it's doing its own thing and doing it very well? And I know I might be hypocritical on this because I have criticized Transformers for doing the same things in the past. But ultimately, I'm going to be honest about how I feel about certain figures. And in this instance, I love this figure. And let's continue the love train with the last new full review that we've got on here. Of course, we're doing Victory Lap after that, but tomorrow, I feel we should probably do a combiner. I ummed and ahed about which one this would be, switching it around, doing this one, doing that one. Which one should I do? Which one should I cover? Ultimately, I picked the one that I felt I had the most to say about. So for Christmas Day, stay tuned for a big one. See y'all tomorrow.